going on, guys? Welcome back. All right, so today we are going to continue to look at the man, the myth, and the legend known as Napoleon Bonaparte. Little short, tiny man, big giant personality, very, very large empire. All right, so when we left off, Napoleon just sold a whole bunch of territory in the Americas to Thomas Jefferson, doubling the size of the Americas, but also giving him millions and millions of dollars to spend, essentially solving or taking a giant step towards solving the economic problem that France had. And so he takes that money to continue to expand his empire. He starts taking over various countries in Europe, one country at a time, over and over and over again. He has all of the continental Europe, all of the Europe that is connected within the continent. He has that conquered. But he's got one country that he seems to continue to have problems with, and that is Great Britain. And the reason being is that Great Britain is an island surrounded by water on all sides, which means that you have to fight Great Britain in a naval battle, especially at this time, because planes and air forces don't exist. So the only way to get there is via navy. And Britain, because they are an island, spend tons of money on their navy. They have a very vast, strong, powerful navy. And he goes to fight Great Britain because he's got an itch. He's got an itch and he can't scratch it. He needs to conquer something. And so he goes and he tries to fight against Great Britain, and he loses the Battle of Trafalgar. It's a naval battle against Great Britain. He loses to Horatio Nelson. And it does a couple of things. It proves for the next 100 years that Britain would have the strongest and the biggest and the baddest navy in the world. Arguably still today, Britain may be able to claim that title. But it also forces Napoleon to give up his plan and his goal and his hope and his desire to take over Great Britain. But that being said, he still controls all of the rest of Europe. He controls Spain. He controls parts of Warsaw, which is kind of in between Europe and Asia. He controls Germany. He controls all of France, Italy. He has all of this just massive outreach. Again, leading to having the largest empire since the Roman Empire. Rome was probably the last European kingdom that is able to control that much land, specifically in Europe. And Napoleon has control of all of Europe except Great Britain. But it's not good enough. The man is known as a conqueror. That's what he does. And so again, he controls everything in this picture from here. Pretty much. That's not up. Controls everything in this box, pretty much. The only thing he can't control is right here. This is what he wants, but he can't have it. That's what he wants, but he's struggling to get it because, again, the only way to get there is via navy, and Great Britain has the strongest and the most powerful navy in the world at the time. His wife, Josephine, becomes very important for women's rights in France. You can see this is how Napoleon was treated. He's able, the last king, the queen that spent this big elaborate amount of money on their palace, beheaded, head cut off, but you can see just how much Napoleon and Josephine were liked. Napoleon's throne, you can tell he's very tiny, again, because that's a very small chair. Napoleon's bedchamber, again, very elaborate. Just goes to show how much Napoleon was liked. But Napoleon, in the height of his reign and control, makes 3 mistakes. Makes 3 very costly mistakes. Mistakes that lead to getting him in a lot of trouble. Number 1, so he figures, okay, I can't defeat them, Great Britain being them, in a fight. But I can cost them lots and lots of money. And so he attempts a naval blockade. He tries to blockade or cut off Great Britain. So, for example, Great Britain is an island, right? Let's say this circle is Great Britain. And what Napoleon tries to do is set up his navy miles off the coast to keep Great Britain from, like, his goal was that any imports that came, he hoped would have to turn around. And no goods would be able to come in, which would cost Great Britain money. But he then also hoped that Britain would not be able to export. That once they faced the blockade, they too would have to turn around and go back, thus costing Britain money in importing and exporting. But the problem is, it's not a very strong blockade. And again, Britain still has a big and powerful navy. And so smugglers are able to get through because the blockade is not tight enough. And Great Britain, therefore, is able to respond. So because they're able to get through the blockade, they're able to respond with their own blockade, blocking France in, keeping France from being able to import or export. And they are much, much more effective, again, because their navy is much, much stronger. And therefore, the effect that Napoleon hoped to have in Great Britain, he ends up bringing it on himself. He ends up having that same effect happen to him. And it leads to the War of 1812. It becomes Great Britain versus America. Napoleon reaches out to America and says, hey, you remember when we helped you in the American Revolution? Time to pay that back. The War of 1812 takes place. But again, all of that money that France just got, they're now having to spend on yet another war. Because again, war is very, very, very expensive. And so you can see the blockade that is put around France, keeping them from being able to import or export. And a lot of times, Britain was able to take these ships back to Britain, and the goods that were supposed to go to France instead go to Britain. So it's kind of a double whammy. It's double not good. The second mistake. So mistake number one is the Continental System, which was his plan and system to blockade Great Britain. It does not work. So the Peninsular War is issue number two. Issue number two. Spain does not want to be under French control. Spain wants to be themselves. Spain also does not want to help Napoleon with the Continental System. So they fight back. They fight back against Napoleon. And they use guerrilla fighters. Not like guerrillas. Spelled different. I know the difference. But these are fighters who did not fight in the traditional manner. It was hide and shoot, or shoot and run, and just taking pop shots. Instead of standing there in an actual battle shooting, it was pew, run. Pew, run. Because that's the noise that a gun. Pew. Yeah, that's the noise a gun makes. But you get the point. So the guerrilla fighters, which really, really messed up Napoleon, he never really had an answer for this guerrilla warfare style of fighting. And so he has to go in there, he has to contain Spain. He can't just show weakness, because then other countries will try to speak out and get out from under Napoleon's rule. So he does send troops in there to fight against this. He's successful in quelling their rebellion, but he loses 300,000 soldiers in the process. And these are 300,000 soldiers that would become very, very helpful in the very near future. Because that brings us to mistake number three. Mistake number three, Napoleon decides he's going to invade Russia. Napoleon realizing, okay, I can't conquer Great Britain. I have control of all of the rest of Europe. I only have one place that I can go, and that's to the east. And if you go to the east, he hits Russia. And so Napoleon breaks down an alliance between the two sides. See, the two sides had an agreement. Russia would never attack Napoleon as long as Napoleon stayed in Europe, and Napoleon would never attack Russia as long as they stayed in Asia. And this was Napoleon's plan. This is how they became two big, bad superpowers that were working alongside one another. But Napoleon, because he's got that itch, gotta conquer something, he breaks the alliance. He breaks the truce. He breaks the agreement between the two sides. So the Russian-French alliance is broken as Napoleon decides he's going to invade. And he brings 420,000 soldiers along with him. Mind you, he just lost 300,000 in Spain. But he brings another 420,000 along with him. And Russia uses what's called the scorched earth policy. Because at this time, it's towards the end of the year. Probably October, November time frame, right? And so we're going to come over here to this handy-dandy whiteboard where I'm going to do some fantastic drawing for you. Russia, because we're going to pretend that Russia is a giant rectangle. This is Russia. Russia knows that Napoleon and his troops are on the way. And so as Napoleon crosses into Russia, the Russians, they burn everything. And they run off. And Napoleon continues on. And as he gets there, they burn everything. And they run off. And Napoleon keeps going further and further and further into Russia. But again, it's already towards the end of the year. It's October, November. It's winter. And Russia has a different type of winter. Russia, it is warm if it is 0 degrees. And all the Russians keep doing is they're pulling Napoleon further and further into Russia, reeling him in just like you reel in a fish. And in the process, they're torching everything, burning down their own stuff, burning down their farms, their towns, their cities. The Russians are burning down all of this Russian stuff. And Napoleon continues to move forward and forward and forward, and he continues going. Tsar Alexander, we talked about Tsar, it's another word for leader. Tsar Alexander destroys Moscow by the time Napoleon gets there, Moscow being the capital of Russia. Napoleon believes when he gets there, he has conquered Moscow. He has won. He has taken it over, which means that he now controls Russia. But at this time, it's like January, so like -30, very, very cold. So as Napoleon decides to return back, this is where the scorched earth policy really hurts him. Because as he's returning back, he has no way to resupply. He can't take food from the farms because the farms are burned. He can't go into Russian homes and take their stuff to resupply because they're burned. There's nothing on the way back for him to resupply with. And so he is forced to return all the way back to France through the treacherous, horrible, freezing Russian winter. And by the time he gets back to France, he has 10,000 soldiers left. Because as he's returning, that's when Russia decides to attack. Russia attacks Napoleon as he's returning back to France, thinking that they've won. And at this time, they're cold, they're tired, they're hungry. There's nowhere for them to go. It's freezing. They can't escape it. They've been on this way for months. And there is nothing that Napoleon can do. His soldiers are tired, and it is believed that it was so cold that on the way back, Napoleon saw French soldiers who had died and their bodies were still completely intact. It was too cold for the body to decay. And by the time he gets back to France, again, there's only 10,000 of his initial 420,000 soldiers left. 410,000 soldiers died in this failed invasion of Russia. And 300,000 died trying to stop a rebellion in Spain. And he lost soldiers in the Battle of Trafalgar fighting against Great Britain. So now he spent money on wars, War of 1812. He spent money trying to blockade. It failed. Lost money in the British retaliatory blockade. Spent money trying to stop a rebellion in Spain. Spent money trying to invade Russia, which failed. He loses an alliance in the process. He has done a lot of bad for France. And so you can see he reaches Moscow. It had been abandoned. They had set fire to it. Moscow's in flames. He believes that he has won. He believes this is great for him. He goes to return, and you can see soldiers that had died along the way from the cold are still completely intact. He's freezing. His soldiers are huddled up, freezing, marching through the snow, dealing with the wind. And so what that leads us to is if you try to invade Russia without anticipating the winter, you are going to have a bad time. And by the time Napoleon gets back to France, he looks like this. That once proud, strong, huge personality is depressed. He's down. He's out. No idea what he's going to do. No reasoning. No thought of how to fix this problem. And so Napoleon's downfall begins because his army is defeated by Russia and Prussia. These are two different countries. Very small country called Prussia and the very large country, Russia. And they march all the way into France, unable to be stopped. He's lost so many people. He's lost so much money. He can't stop them. They're marching down the streets of Paris. And Napoleon is forced to surrender. Napoleon surrenders. Part of that surrender is that he gives up control and power. And so he surrenders his throne. And he's kicked off to a small, tiny island of Elba. A small, very, very tiny, minuscule island off the coast of Italy. With the thought being, that's where he will die. He will never rule France again. He will never come back. This is where he will die. Little does Europe, everyone else know, this is not the case. Napoleon will be back. But we're going to stop here for today when Napoleon's stuck on this little tiny island in Italy. And next time we will go deeper into the second reign of Napoleon. Be sure to check Canvas for your assignment. If you have any questions, reach out to me. And as always, have a great day.